Your heart must not be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If not, I would have told you. I am going away to prepare a place for you. If I go away and prepare a place for you, I will come back and receive you to myself, so that where I am, you may be also. You know the way to where I am going. Lord, Thomas says, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
I am a nice guy.
I am dry.
I am funny.
I'm sometimes a little slow on the uptake.
I'm a gentleman, just like my mother raised me.
I am shrewd, but fair.
I am the way, the truth, and the life.
I am more than a demographic.
I am a human being. I am not an animal.
Someone who doesn't know when to give up.
I'm looking for something more than this.
I am full of longing. I want to see the face of God. I want to understand what life is all about. I want to understand the heart of the Lord, His will for us all.
If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on you do know him and have seen him. I am the way, the truth, and the life.
All right, I think I got it now. Good morning. Good to see everybody here. It is so great to see a bunch of familiar faces and a handful of new ones. And we are just so excited to be here with you this morning. And we are, for those who haven't met us or maybe haven't heard our complete story, we're planning a church with another family down in Sun Prairie. And many of you were there. You prayed over us. You sent us out to do that work. And God has been moving. If you had a couple hours, I could share a little bit about that. We've had people trusting in Christ and lives being changed, and God is growing His kingdom there. And so we're so thankful for that. More importantly, I guess, is we're just thankful for you and your willingness to hold the rope for us and to be there for us and to show love, speak encouragement to us. It really means so much. We recently, I guess the last kind of biggest move that God has done in the last couple weeks is during City Reach, which I'm sure some of you heard about. We had our 8-year-old daughter come to receive Christ, Trinity Bachlich. And so she's going to be baptized in a couple weeks at that baptism celebration at Lake Wabisa. So we're very excited about that, and we're excited about what God is doing. If you're interested and you have a couple hours, come see me after, and I can fill you in, okay? I did want to speak to you a few moments this morning. We recently taught through a series at North City called Present Tense Jesus, and I'd like to share just a few of those thoughts with you. The entire Gospel of John, so you can make your way to John chapter 14. Thank you, by the way, Cameron, for reading that text for us this morning. John, the entire book, it shows us really how Jesus didn't just live in the past. He wasn't just a historical figure. He meets us right here, right now, in the moment. And as John wrote his account of the life of Jesus in that gospel, he was inspired to share with us 7 different statements through the book where Jesus would simply say, I am. Now, this would call back to an ancient name that God's people used to call him in the Old Testament, Yahweh, which literally means I am who I am. And that name simply means that God always has been, He always will be, He never changes. And so for Jesus to be on this earth and to say that time and time and time again, I am, it meant that He was literally claiming to be God in the flesh. More than that, what's so amazing about this statement, whenever we hear Jesus say, I am, You know, one of the interesting things about that is it is a unfinished sentence. You can fill in the blank. If your spirit is hungry, Jesus is the bread of life. If you're in darkness, he's the light. If you want to be known, he's the good shepherd. If you feel lost, he's the way. If you're searching for answers, he's the truth. If you feel empty inside, he says he's the resurrection and the life. See, Jesus didn't just live in the past. He meets us in the moment. And another amazing thing about I am is, grammatically speaking, it's always in the present tense. So when we read these statements over and over again, he didn't just mean it to be true 2,000 years ago, but it's true now. And it will be true in 1,000 more years, no matter how many people agree or disagree, no matter how much the culture accepts or denies these words. Jesus is saying, whatever need that you have in this time, in this place, in this moment, I can fill it. He's the one that's created us. That's why he's the present tense, Jesus. So I'm going to look at 3 statements packed into one today in John 14, when Jesus says, I am the way, I'm the truth, and the life. So in John chapter 14 and verse 1, I want us to picture what was taking place in this moment, not only to understand what was happening, but as a reference point for us, because what Jesus said to them can be applied to difficult times and situations in your life right here and right now. So Jesus was gathered with 11 of his closest followers, his disciples. The night before his death, he had just dismissed Judas to leave. And so 11 of his disciples were still there. And he knew, this was the night before he died, he knew this was the last chance that he would have to share any thoughts with his followers. What would he say? What would he leave with them? Well, in the last chapter, John chapter 13, he washed their feet. He's teaching them that lesson. And he kind of ends by saying this. He says, at the end of chapter 13, he says, you know, I have to tell you something. Where I'm going away. Where I'm going, you cannot come. And Peter, one of his most outspoken followers, said, hold on a second, Jesus, wait a second. Where are you going? We've spent the last 3 years of our lives invested into doing whatever you're doing. You can't possibly be saying that you're leaving us now. And Jesus answered and he said, listen, where I'm going, you can't follow me now, but you can come later. You'll follow me afterward. So the question is, in that moment, in that tension, Jesus told them he was leaving. Where was he going? And what did he mean when he told his followers that they couldn't follow him now, but they would after? After what? I can just imagine how this would have caused the disciples to kind of go in freak out mode, you know? We probably wanted Jesus to just speak plainly. Just tell us what's going on, Jesus. Where are you going? And at that moment, I'm sure things began to get tense. We don't exactly know what the disciples were thinking at that moment, but if I'd have heard that, my mind would have immediately went to, does he know something that I don't? Does he know something that we are trying to figure out here? Is he going to die? I mean, he's been talking crazy the last couple weeks anyway. Is that really going to happen? This is the one they've committed their lives to. They weren't expecting it to end this way, even though he tried to prepare them for it. And so that's the setting. For the rest of this conversation, John chapter 14, a room filled with tension, a room filled with anxiety, a room filled with trouble. And you know exactly what I'm talking about because some of you are probably there right now. You're overwhelmed with problems, with questions that seem to flood your mind. And before you can catch your breath, blow after blow after blow keeps coming, and sometimes it feels like God has left you or he is leaving you, and there's a distance there and you can't figure out, and so you are in the same room filled with tension, with the same questions that the disciples had. It's in this anxiety-filled room that Jesus cuts through the tension with these words in verse 1. He says this, your heart must not be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. Have you ever had sorrow and tragedy hit your life to where someone who means well and they're trying to help you, I get that, but they come up and they say, listen, don't worry. Everything's going to work out in the end, right? Everything's going to be okay. It's all going to work out. Doesn't that seem kind of hollow sometimes? Isn't that wishful thinking? And you're thinking, okay, great, I get what you're trying to do, but come on. Let's be real with each other here. And see, the answer is things will not always be okay. There's going to be problems. There's going to be tension. There's going to be anxiety. There's going to be issues in your life that you don't know how to fix. And if the statement, everything will work out in the end, is your only reference point to anchor your life to in times of trouble, then you're going to be in for a rough ride. So I love Jesus' statement because he didn't say this. He didn't say, don't let your heart be troubled because everything's going to work out in the end. He gives us a deeper well to anchor our hearts to. He says, you believe in God. Now it's time to believe in me. I love the way the New Living Translation phrases verse 1. It says this, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. And I think that's powerful because this phrase, there's a couple different words for believe in the scripture. And this phrase leads more towards trust. See, in our understanding, this word believe is not just an intellectual understanding. It speaks of a trust that's rooted in relationship. See, Jesus was saying, look, I get it. I understand, but don't let your hearts be full of anxiety, worry, and grief. He's saying it's time to trust me. See, belief and trust might be similar, but they're different. Trust goes deeper than just an intellectual belief. A belief can be cold and just intellectual, but trust is warm and personal. It's built on relationship. It's been said that religion puts the heart of the matter on fear, good works, traditions, etc., but the bond between us and God is trust. Relationship fuels mission. Mission does not substitute relationship. So, if there's anything I can leave with you this morning, one central thought to take away, it's this. Trusting the present tense Jesus is the best foundation for your life. It's the only thing that you can anchor your life to understand what's coming next and to understand that you can't fix everything. I love this because in this passage, Jesus isn't promising to solve their problems, right? The facts weren't changing. Jesus was still leaving. He was still going away, and they were still going to be left all alone. And that room filled with tension wasn't going to get much better when Jesus would leave. But he's instructing them on how to have peace in the middle of your problem. Trusting in him looks to a source outside of us for peace, for hope. I don't know about you, but I am a fixer, you know? Something comes up in my life or someone tells me about a problem. I have a really hard time. Ask my wife, she knows this. I have a really hard time just listening, right? I want to jump in. Offer a solution. Well, that's simple. You just do this, this, and this. Fixed. Boom. Let's move on. Next problem. There aren't always going to be problems in your life that you can fix. And there's not just some magic prayer that you can say that God's going to make them all go away either. See, trust is believing in someone bigger than us. You're going to face problems that are bigger than you that you can't fix. And instead of demanding them to be fixed like a spoiled child looks to his parents and says, no, you fix it or I'm going to hold my breath until I turn blue. We are told to take our anxiety about those problems to the one who can fix them if he chooses to. See, trust is more than just that spoiled child scenario. It's more than just saying, Jesus, I can't fix this problem in my life. You fix it. Trust is believing that Jesus is bigger than our problem, and even if he doesn't fix it, we know that he will at least fix us. There's an old saying that says, smooth sailing never made a good sailor. I love that. God doesn't promise us that we won't have trouble, but he does provide an anchor point that runs deeper than the surface, deeper than everything's going to work out in the end, everything's going to be okay. He gives us peace in the middle of pain. And so Jesus talks about how he's leaving and the disciples can't go with him. And after he tells them to trust him, he begins speaking about the reason he's leaving. So pick up in verse 2 with me. And we'll read through 4 real quick. He says, in my Father's house are many dwelling places. If not, I would have told you. I am going away to prepare a place for you. Verse 3, if I go away and prepare a place for you, I will come back and receive you to myself, so that where I am, you may be also. And verse 4 says, you know the way to where I'm going. You know the way. Jesus was telling them, and he's telling us right now, I am leaving now so that you can be with me later. I'm going to prepare a place for you. In other words, Jesus was leaving so he could make a way for us. Now, when I was younger, when I was a kid, I used to have this picture in my head of what it meant to think that Jesus was preparing a place for me. Because, right, you remember, like, he was a carpenter, right? So I get this picture that Jesus was hammering on 2x4s, and he's got the carpenter's pencil behind his ear, and he's building a house for me in heaven, and it's going to be fit just for me, and it's perfect. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't think that's exactly what he's saying here, is my point. It says that there are already many dwelling places in my Father's house. So what does he mean by he's going to prepare a place for you? You know what I think he's saying? I think he's saying he made a way for us by going before us. He prepared a place for me by what he did on the cross for my sin. He was saying, look, I have to go away because I have to go and I have to die on a cross for you and for everyone else who's ever lived. And it's going to be hard, and you're not going to have all the answers, and you're not going to be able to figure it out, but I'm coming back. Little did they know it would be 3 days and 3 nights later, and he would rise again. He prepared a place for us by what he did on the cross. His resurrection defeated death and sin once and for all, so those who place their trust in him could follow him after their life on earth is over. He had to leave now so that we could be with him later. So essentially, Jesus is saying, listen, I have to leave now to make a way for you. This involves the cross and the tomb, even though they didn't understand it, even though they didn't know it. But because of this, there's going to be room in heaven for you, and room in heaven for us, and room in heaven for everyone to take one of those dwelling places that's already there in the Father's house. And this answers any question that comes up in your life, because you have something to anchor to. Jesus was saying, if you trust me, one day you'll be with me forever. And he said, look, you know the way. You know the way to where I'm going. You know how to get there. Now, of course, this is hitting the disciples like a ton of bricks, right? Wait a second, Jesus, wait. We don't even know where you're going. Of course, Thomas breaks in. They called him Doubting Thomas. There was a reason for that. He breaks in, and apparently not getting the point, he says in verse 5 for us, Lord, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? If you don't even know what the destination is, how can you know the path to get there? So that's the question, isn't it? The question for Thomas, the question for the disciples, the question for me, and the question for you. How can we know the way? How can we know the way to go? I feel like I've asked that question 1,000 times over. You know, when you plant a church, and Pastor Sonny, he knows all about this. I have asked for God to show us the way step after step after step. And sometimes week after week, and sometimes day after day. And you know, one thing I'm learning, it isn't a secret of finding the right book, finding the right process, finding the right template, making sure you're welcoming those first-time guests just right. All those things are part of the process. But you know what? That isn't about finding the way for us. I found that the more I rest in Him, the clearer the next step becomes. And God works that way for a reason. He doesn't give you the whole map. He gives you the next step. And then He asks you to take faith to step out and take that step. And once you take that step, all of a sudden He reveals just one more step. And then it's all over again. You know what He's doing? He's teaching you to depend on Him. He's teaching you to live in a relationship built on trust. Because after a while, blind faith, if someone's there for you time and time and time again, it becomes trust. I know He's going to be there because He's been there 1,000 times before. So I've learned that He doesn't show us the way, He is the way. It's not about trying harder. It's about anchoring yourself to the present tense Jesus. He is there for you right now. He said, I am, right? So whatever problem that you've been in, you say, well, I've been through a lot in my life. Okay, but forget about the past. What about right now? He's meeting you where you are right now. That's why we call Him the present tense Jesus. It's trusting Him. And so Thomas says, listen, we don't even know where you're going. How can we know the way? Jesus responds in verse 6. He says, Thomas, I am the way. I am the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. See, Jesus didn't just make a way for us. He is the way for us. And that's how Thomas could know. That's how Thomas could know. Wait a second, we don't even know the destination, Jesus. How do we know the way? He says, I'm it. A relationship, trusting me, that's the way. He went before you so you could be with Him. This answers any question that comes up in the dark times of your life because we ask them and worry, right? We ask questions and we worry. That's the process. We grieve, we hurt, and we wonder. But if trusting Jesus is your foundation, then He gives you answers. Maybe not the answers that you want, but He gives you the answers that you need. Matter of fact, in this one statement, He gives us 3 answers to important areas of our lives. And here they are. Can I be safe? Of course you can. You know why? Because Jesus is the way. Now that must have meant so much to the disciples in that moment because they must have felt anything but safe. They were fearful. But safety isn't necessarily being away from harm and danger. Safety is resting in the hands of someone stronger than your problems. Safety is knowing that trouble will come, but the one who is greater is still in control. And when your life is over, you will be safe in His presence forever. You will be where I am. If your foundation's trusting Him, you'll realize how Jesus doesn't show you the right way to live. He is the only way to live. And we find life in that. Again, he didn't say that he is a way. He said that he was the way, the one and only. No one comes to the Father except through him. It's not religion. It's not good deeds or money or power or accomplishment. It's knowing him. If you are lost today, and that little word can describe a lot of different situations in our lives. If you feel lost today, Jesus is the way. But you say, well, wait a second. How can I be sure? How can I know for sure? Well, you can be sure because Jesus is the truth, he said. Every religion claims to have the truth. So people always ask, what makes this any different? Well, if you spend time reading through Scripture, or at least the Gospels, you're going to discover that Jesus doesn't just teach truth. He claimed to be the embodiment of truth. People say that, well, Jesus, he's a good teacher, but he's not the only source of truth. There's a lot of other good teachers out there. But listen, a good teacher does not teach lies, right? So here he is, in this one short statement, claiming to be the ultimate source of truth. Either he's telling the truth as a good teacher, or he's lying, but it can't be both. So you have to choose whether you're trusting in him or not, but that doesn't change the fact that he is the truth. It's been said, no matter how rich, successful, religiously moral and upright, popular or powerful you are, you come to God through Jesus or you don't come at all. That statement is not arrogant, it's just true. So think of how exclusive of a statement that is. It excludes all religions, ideas, philosophies that do not teach that Jesus is the only way to heaven. If you are searching for answers, Jesus is the truth. People say, well, can I be satisfied? Yes, because Jesus is the life. Yes, he gives us eternal life. Yes, he promises us a dwelling place in the Father's house. And yes, he's paved the way by what he did on the cross and the empty tomb after that. But when your life on earth is over, yes, we're going to live in his presence forever. But he gives you a purpose right now for this life. And that's why he's the present tense Jesus. It isn't just about what's coming in the future. He wants you to live in the moment too. Because that's the reason he has you here. That's the reason he doesn't take all of us to his Father's house as soon as we trust in him. Because he has a work for us to do. So right here, right now, the present tense Jesus is calling you to something. Maybe a relationship with him, and you've never had one, you've never had that, you're wondering what that's like. He's calling you to that. Maybe you're a believer, a child of God, and you're trying to figure out what's next. Well, Jesus is calling you to something right now. Satisfaction doesn't come from the idea that God will give us everything we want. He's not some divine genie in a bottle. He isn't interested so much in making you happy and healthy as much as he is in making you holy. But there has to be something more, something deeper. When we go through trouble and grief and pain that cuts us down to the core of who we are, there has to be something deeper than, don't worry, it'll all be okay, or it'll all work out in the end, or even I'm sending positive thoughts your way. You have to anchor yourself to something deeper. In times like this, please remember this. Trusting the present tense Jesus is the best foundation for your life. And if Jesus is telling the truth, and I believe I'm staking my life on the fact that he is, then he's the only foundation for your life. See, I trust him. Because he's been there for me time and time and time again. Because he is the way, the truth, and the life. And he can make you feel safe and sure and satisfied by anchoring to that trust in a relationship with him. If you don't know what that is, if you don't feel safe and sure and satisfied, even in the middle of dark and scary times to your life, you can begin a relationship with Him today. Trusting in Him, asking Him to make you a new person, receiving the forgiveness that He purchased for you at the cross. If you're a believer, you can reconnect to that safety, that confidence, that satisfaction that He offers today. I wonder how that hit the disciples when they're sitting there and He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. And He goes on to teach, and I wonder if they're just looking around like, what in the world does that mean? It's tough. Because He didn't change the problem. He was still leaving. They're like, okay, great. Thanks for the pep talk. But how can I have something to last beyond this? And that's it. He was saying, I am it. So, if you're searching for answers, if you're lost, if you're looking for purpose, He's the way, He's the truth, and He's the life. And whatever anxiety and problems and issues that you're carrying through your life right now, you don't have to have a roadmap on the way out of the way out. You don't have to get every self-help book or motivational book you can find to get all of these processes and these steps to it. You know what Jesus says? I am the way. We don't need a map. We need more Jesus. I know from experience in my life, and I hope that you'll know it in yours, that I have something deeper to anchor to when problems come. I have a trust in the one who's much bigger than the issues that I carry. So believe me when I tell you, trusting the present tense Jesus is the best foundation for your life. Let me pray for you this morning. God, we thank You for who You are and what You've done in our lives. And I thank